Okay, good morning everybody. Welcome to the July user group. Let's jump straight into today's session. So this month we wanted to focus on templates for both email and landing pages, but you'll notice as we go through there's template capability for just about everything within Eloqua, so that should be nice and easy for you to work through. We'll also look at signature rules and layouts, shared content and dynamic content. And some of these various components can be used in templates, so we figured it made sense to use these or to share a little bit more information about some of these components as well as we move throughout today. But let's get started and go straight to templates. Okay, so first of all, let's look at the fundamentals of templates. Templates really are a great way to just save time and to deliver a more consistent experience to those people who are receiving your communications. The ability of templates to provide that consistent experience is fantastic, and certainly for most of the organizations that are on the line today, just looking at who's with us, you've got good, strong branding guidelines. And so where you have good, strong branding guidelines, the use and creation of templates is quite easy. And you can have a range of different types of templates, and we'll look at some of those here in just a moment. The first thing to get out of the way is to understand that by simply creating an asset, whether it be an email or a landing page or even segments, etc., you can't simply save as and call that a template. That's not a template. It's just simply like saving a file to your C drive on your computer versus actually saving it as a template. So if you're familiar with the construct of templates for PowerPoint, for instance, or even Excel or Word, that exact same construct is what you're looking at. That's what we're trying to do here, is to create templates that remove a lot of the potential errors that can come when we simply take last month's email, copy that email across, and then manually have to remove old links and then load in new links, etc. So we want to try and avoid that as much as possible. Now, within Eloqua, you've got a range of different levels of capability for what you can create templates for, and these are just some of them. So things like the campaign canvas, emails, segments, landing pages, and forms, you can create templates for all of these various bits and pieces. But what I want to do is just give you some tips and ideas and some considerations to think about before you rush into making templates. So first one is you certainly want to avoid date and time-sensitive information. By this, I mean certainly using lorem ipsum text is probably the smartest thing to do. If you've got copy involved in the template, don't just simply use a message and then recycle and recycle and recycle, because eventually it'll obviously become irrelevant. So using some lorem ipsum placeholder text is probably the smartest way to do that. You also want to think about the skill level of the user, as in the Eloqua user. So you have the ability to create templates using the native editor within Eloqua, both for landing pages and emails, but you can also create HTML templates as well. And so if the HTML email requires some editing, you need to think about the skill level, obviously, of your user community to make sure that that's easy and that the team can manage that comfortably. The other thing is certainly in relation to links or URLs in templates. The process of loading URLs is quite simple. Some of them won't change, obviously. So if you have a template with a link to your homepage, which sits behind the logo, etc., it makes sense to build that into the template. But where you've got campaign-specific content, it's always much safer to ensure that you don't have old links or URLs sitting in those templates. Now, segments are a great way to save time. I had a specific incident last week with a customer where it was time to send out the internal staff newsletter, and they had simply created a segment many months ago and was simply recycling that same segment. It wasn't a template, it was just simply a segment saved within the segment folders. The challenge was that another colleague, unbeknown to the person who sends out the newsletter to staff, thought, oh, that's a great segment, I'll use that one. They simply added a whole bunch of business partners and customers. So then when, when my contact or our contact went to send out the staff newsletter in fact went to just about everybody. So what happened there was sales leaderboards, commission details, etc., were shared with business partners and also with customers. Now that situation could have been completely avoided if templates were used in place of simply recycling an old segment. So there are many benefits to using templates, and that example is certainly just one of them. Where you are using segment templates, though, as we've said here on the screen, you need to just keep in mind any changes that are perhaps made to your CRM integration. Again, looking at those folks on the phone, looks like most of you probably are running integration with a CRM, whether that be Salesforce or Oracle Sales Cloud or NetSuite or any of the major CRM platforms. Just to keep that in mind, because you are likely to be making changes to the CRM and likely making changes potentially to the data structure. So you just want to make sure that your segments are up to date all the time. Form templates are another great way to save time. There's no reason you should ever really be arriving at the form editor with a blank form and dropping in first name, email, etc. You could make a series of form templates for different things. So if you're running events on a frequent basis, you could create an event template for forms. You could also create a template for forms to cover off thought leadership, for instance. This way, you always remember to include things like opt-in buttons and tick boxes. You could use progressive profiling on those as well. So again, the progressive profiling options are built into the template. And so that really means that creating a form can be reduced from perhaps a half-hour exercise or even a 45-minute exercise down to a 5 or 10-minute exercise. And that way you've also got consistency and experience in what you're doing. So templates for forms really makes a lot of sense. So what I want to do now is actually just show you a couple of templates and give you a little bit of an idea as to what's possible. Okay, so templates. Templates, as we said, you can get templates from Campaign Canvas, you can get templates from emails, landing pages, etc. But let's have a look, first of all, at some email templates. So when the average user comes into Eloqua, they'll click on Create an Email, and the default is to look at blank and recent, which you see up here in the top left-hand corner. In our instance of Eloqua, if you click on the next option, All Files, you'll see a whole range of various templates that we have in use. So for the user group, for instance, if I click through into our user group folder, we've got a few different ones there. So let's have a look at this one. So I come in, and this is the email that goes out to people with details for the actual webinar. You can see that we've used Lorem Ipsum in relation to agenda, etc. There's dial-in details there, etc. Join the meeting links. The host, you can see with dates. It's always held on a Tuesday, so we left that hardwired in. But you can see day and month, etc. And the times remain the same, except when we go to summertime. So that's the only thing we change. When we go to summertime, we alter that a little bit further. And you can see at the bottom there, we've included a signature, which we'll be talking a little bit more about later. So that's one version of a template. Now, being able to edit that template, now you need to be an administrator in order to do that, but you would go to Manage Templates. So depending on the user and their level of access, they will have various levels of capability as to what they can do. But the Manage Templates option here on the screen, if we click on Manage Templates, we now have basically the same sort of interface, but what happens when we open that particular template now, things differ a little bit in what we can do and what we can say. So first thing up in the top left-hand corner, you'll see in this particular example, it says Standard, which tells you that you're in editing mode. You can also go to a lockdown option, so you can move to protected mode. And so once you're in protected mode, this enables you now to lock certain things down. So for instance, in this example for this template, the Oracle Marketing Cloud Eloqua user group header there, we don't want any changes done to that. So I can lock that one down. I can also mark it as editable, etc., if I want people to be able to do that. If I click here on this text, I can say mark as editable. So tick the box like so and hit save. And then once that's done, you'll see these blue dotted lines will appear around the text box itself. And that shows you that that particular area is editable. So everything else will be locked down except for the areas that I mark as editable. So certainly here, we'd want that to be editable. So again, I can give it a name if I wanted to. I can also provide people with the option to actually delete various pieces. So I just need to be able to tick that box called Allow Delete, and that will enable people to do that. The RSVP now button, that would have to be editable because I'd need to enable that as a mark it editable, which would enable people to add a hyperlink to it, etc. And so all I do is I go through there. I can now choose to lock things down, and that will provide a different experience. When the user comes in, they won't see the menu over here on the left-hand side of the screen. What they'll do is they'll double-click on the relevant text areas. A box will open, very similar to the box that you use for editing the shared content, dynamic content, etc. And they'll be able to add hyperlinks and do all those sorts of fun things. Okay. Now, pretty much everything, just one other thing, you'll notice over there on the top left-hand corner, the status icon changed to protected. And so that's based on the fact that I chose the padlock option over here on the right-hand side, which is to make it protected. And so that's one way you can choose to lock down that type of a template. Let me show you a different template, which will be, I'm just going to make sure I can find this one. The new one the guys added for me. Actually, I'll show you a landing page template. So create a landing page, this one right here. So the support team have put together for me a template which looks just like our website. And so we've got an email equivalent for this one as well. So you can see we've followed our own advice here, and once it appears on your screen, here it comes, you'll see that there is, it's all lorem ipsum text. And you can see on the right-hand side, I can see the HTML code. On the left-hand side, I can see what the page actually looks like. Now, if I adjust this column here in the middle, you can also see that the page we've created is in fact responsive. And so the same applies here with emails. You can do exactly the same thing using HTML and the editor to produce responsive emails. Now the user is able to come in here and do some basic editing, primarily in relation to the text. Okay, so if we take this text here at the top of the screen, if I just simply double click in there, I can now start to edit that text and adjust my message. Okay, so you can see that most of you on this call have met and know me, and I'm not an HTML guru in any sense of the word. So what you can see there is that I'm actually now able to come in here and edit and play with the HTML text that you can see, and producing responsive pages, both by email and also by landing pages. So the template flexibility within Eloqua is quite dynamic. You've got lots of options to play with, which makes things a lot easier for you in relation to different builds that you might want to do based on whether they be event templates, whether they be thought leadership download templates, whatever they may be. You've got lots of options as to how you would actually produce those various templates for people. Now, do we have any questions there in relation to templates for both emails and for landing pages? Let's have a look at some dynamic content. So dynamic content is used quite a bit. It has multiple applications and can be used for a whole range of things. But understanding how dynamic content is used is probably the first key step in the process. So how does it work? Well, quite simply, dynamic content is largely, not only, but largely linked to the contact. So when we create rules to display certain pieces of dynamic content, we create those rules based on information typically from the contact. If we look at this example here, this is the dynamic content window that enables you to set up various pieces of either images like JPEGs, as you can see on the screen right now, or you can put in blocks of text. So in this particular example, what we're looking at is being able to provide an image of various city skylines, and you can see the city skylines listed there on the left-hand side. And what we do there is effectively create a default rule. So for us, the default rule was Sydney, and then we've added each of the cities in addition to that. So again, we have Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, Adelaide, Auckland, and Singapore. And so the process basically is to walk through, you use the plus button there up in the top left-hand corner to add those additional rules. Once you've added those rules, you can see I've added lots of them, and we've used Brisbane there as an example. So what I've done with Brisbane is we've said any contacts that have a state which is equal to QLD, so Queensland, or they have a city that is a value of Brisbane. So in a perfect world where perfect data exists, we could probably just put Queensland, but you never know. We might have someone who we don't have a state for, but we know they're in Brisbane, etc. So we're covering our bases there. Now, of course, you could be far more detailed than that. You could put or, and have Gold Coast, Rockhampton, Townsville, etc., etc., etc. So you've got lots of flexibility there in relation to how you make up the rule. Now, if somebody doesn't meet any of the rule criteria that you've set there for Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, Adelaide, Auckland, or Singapore, that means they will in fact receive the default rule. So in our situation, the default rule was Sydney, as I said earlier. Okay, step 4. So I said to you a moment ago that largely we drive dynamic content based on data that sits on the contact. But you can also use account fields. You can also use custom object data. And if you have the event module within Eloqua, you can also use data from your event module as well. So there's certainly flexibility there as to how you might display various pieces of dynamic content. But let me show you what that actually looks like. We go to Assets and Components, and then to Dynamic Content. And then once we're in there, you'll see that we have a range of pieces of dynamic content visible here. Let me show you some for the meetup. Actually, no, let me show you some from the user group. That would make more sense because we're all here looking at the user group. We capture some information in relation to gender. Now, of course, we don't display that information necessarily. It's just a very subtle way for us to potentially display to people an image that they may relate to a little bit more, instead of always consistently being a guy or a girl. And so we simply deliver one of those two messages and those two images. So we've got the young guy sitting at his desk, or the nice young lady sitting watching a webinar. So that's one example of how we can present some different information. We also present, what's this one? Yeah. So this one we use often in the bottom of our newsletter. So we have a default rule that if we don't have a status of somebody as being a member of the user group, they'll receive the default rule. If they're a non-user, so in other words, we know for a fact that they're not a member of the group, we can display that same image. However, if you are a member of the user group, what we would do there is encourage you to visit our blog. So from within the dynamic content editor, if you click on the full button, it'll take you to an editor that you're probably familiar with. And it's here that you can then put links and URLs behind those images, etc. Here we're taking people off to the blog. If you want to include text with field merges, you can access those there. And of course, you've got all the basic editing text here as well. Now, as I said, so dynamic content can be used not just simply for images, but also for text. And I think this is one we did, this is one we did for a meetup that we had back in actually that was April this year, 2016. We were inviting both our commercial customers, but also our not-for-profit customers and prospects as well. And I thought that it was appropriate to just try and pitch the event slightly differently to our NFP contacts. So the default rule is the one that you can see on screen here, and we've sort of listed sort of why attend. However, when you have a look at the NFP version, the language changes slightly, and we just wanted to have a slightly different feel in relation to that language. And so we've chosen the rules to deliver that were based on industry information captured at both the contact and account level. And so you can see those listed here above with the rules. So you add those simply by clicking on the plus button, compare contact fields. You'll receive a pop-up, and then from there you're able to double-click, come through, and then select the relevant fields, etc., to help create the rules that you're wanting to do. So that's a couple of examples of some dynamic content. But let's move on to shared content. Shared content is incredibly valuable. I was just literally talking to a customer yesterday about shared content and trying to explain the benefits and why you might do it. And this particular quote, apparently allegedly, from Albert Einstein, we don't know for a fact apparently that he actually said this, but allegedly the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again but expecting different results. A great example of shared content is, let's start with the logo. So if you're building emails and landing pages, and time and again you'll be dragging the logo onto the page, and then you'll click on the logo, you'll then add a hyperlink to it. That hyperlink probably takes you to your home page. That's a very repetitive task. So where you have repetitive tasks like that, they're perfect examples of where shared content can kick in. So we use shared content in a number of ways, but let me show you one example of how we use shared content on one of our microsites. So if I go to college.marketingcube, college.marketingcube is a microsite. We have some information, and you should feel free to visit that, by the way, at any point. You can see here, once that loads. All right, so this particular microsite behaves kind of like you would expect a website to behave. So you can see I click on resources, I get a slightly different experience. If I go back to the home page, I get a slightly different experience. If I click on blog, it'll actually take us off to a website, and Meetup, it will take us off to meetup.com. But this whole piece that you can see here at the top, so the banner, the hero image, and what looks like a website menu structure, which is in fact just simply a text box with text in it. So those red boxes, the black line, and the hero image, that's actually a piece of shared content. So as we build these various pages for the college website or microsite, we're getting absolute consistency because we're using shared content to deliver that, to create well, it's a microsite. I was going to say a fake website, but it's a microsite. Now, if I scroll to the bottom of the page, again, you'll see another application of shared content, which has to do with the footer that sits on that particular page. So what we wanted to be able to do was, instead of just simply having nothing at the bottom of landing pages, we wanted to have some branding that would be suitable and nice and easy. So that entire black box that you can see there with our logo, the street address, the Oracle logos, links to social pages, etc., and also the privacy policy, all of that is actually one piece of shared content. We're able to use that on any web page that we produce or any Eloqua landing page that we produce. We can then drop that piece of shared content onto the page. Now, some of you will remember when our offices used to be over at William Street in Darlinghurst, and we moved to Cumberland Street here in the Rocks in Sydney. So when we made that move, I had this sinking feeling of potentially hundreds of landing pages that I was going to have to update with the new address. But then I realized, because Addy, most of you will know Addy in our support team, Addy had said to me a long time ago that I should look at doing shared content, which I did. I listened to his advice. I produced the shared content, and that's what that footer is right there. So it meant literally sort of at 5 o'clock on a Friday, I was able to go into the shared content, update the address from William Street to Cumberland Street in the Rocks, and that immediately updated all of my Eloqua landing pages, of which there were probably 150 plus landing page assets. So by the time people came in on Monday morning, well, in fact, by the time 5:30 on a Friday afternoon, it now had the new office address and details right across all of those assets. So shared content is a great resource and is very, very helpful where you have repetitive actions and repetitive content that you want to have look right every time. Let's have a look at shared content. So shared content is found in assets. We go to assets and then to components and to shared content. And in here, you'll find a range of different things that we've done using shared content. Some of these are campaign specific, but some, and probably most actually, are generally available in order for us to add to whatever it is that we need to do. So one example would be a Google map. So we created a map that's just simply a JPEG, and sitting behind that JPEG is a hyperlink. straight to Google Maps. So that's 600 pixels wide. It's perfect for emails, etc., and can be dropped straight into emails for clarification around location for events and all that sort of fun stuff. From time to time, we do some things with the Oracle Sales Cloud team. And so again, we've got the Oracle Sales Cloud logo here that we can access, and again, sitting with a hyperlink directly behind it, taking people straight to cloud.oracle.com/sales. So again, we don't have to think or worry about accessing that information. What else do we have? Oh, the coffee's on us. So this is just a little blurb of text that we use from a shared content point of view that we can sort of drop in wherever we want, on whether it be on a landing page or whether it be on an email. Shared content can go wherever it needs to go, and in this case, we've chosen to use some text for that particular example. We've got them stored here in folders as well. So we've got Oracle Marketing Cloud, Oracle Sales Cloud, Oracle CX, different joint campaigns that we may do. So if we're doing something again with business partners, I can now drop that onto a landing page, which gives the page a little bit more of an Oracle feel. So if we're doing joint campaigns, if you're working with business partners, you can produce these sorts of assets which then become reusable, and you're not having to do them over and over and over again, which certainly saves time. And again, provides consistency. And if details change, as in 1-800 numbers might change, or if links to privacy, etc., change, you can come in here, obviously, to the shared content, make that change once, and all of your existing assets will be updated with that new information. And so here's just a very simple example of a little piece of shared content, which is just purely the office address with phone number to be able to drop in wherever we need to go. So again, including the ABN number. ABNs are something that we don't always seem to remember. By adding that to shared content, that's nice and easy. We've got just on 20 minutes to finish, which is just perfect because now I need you to put on your thinking caps. So let's walk you through signature rules and signature layouts. Now these can be a little bit complexing for people to try and figure out. To give you an example, I was sitting with a client the other day, and we were talking about signatures. Applying signatures. The client is new to Eloqua. They're going to be using Eloqua for about 6 months. And so what they've done is they've started to build out some dynamic content, and we're going to use dynamic content to deliver their signatures. Yeah, going in the wrong direction. Look, there's nothing specifically wrong with that approach, but there's no need to do it because you've actually got a full signature level of functionality built into your instance of Eloqua. That is a much easier way to do things and enables you to keep information as up to date as possible, especially with signatures that you might be building for salespeople, etc. within the organization. Dynamic content would be a bit clumsy in order to manage that information, and using the actual signature function would be a much smarter solution. So I'll let you just have a little read, if you don't mind, just quickly, of that information that's sitting on the screen right now. But let's move through and I'll explain exactly how you go through this process. Now, most of you will be familiar. When you build an email in Eloqua, up in the top left-hand corner of that in the email editor itself, actually let me jump ahead, you will see this type of construct. So the from name and the from address. Now that works perfectly for you where you have a single email coming from one person within your organization to many people. So as I say here, it's perfect when all recipients should receive the email from one person. That's absolutely fine. And that means that when that email goes out and it arrives in people's inbox, the from will be either John Smith, or it could be Derek Bell or Adrian, whoever, or it could be the company name, so it might be Marketing Cube. And of course, you'll have the reply to address there as well. So from a visual point of view, that's what this might look like. So we have Jenny, who's the salesperson, and all of those contacts sitting on the right-hand side are Jenny's contacts. And so that's one email, and it's a one-to-many relationship. Now, the complexity comes in where the situation changes slightly, where you would use the signature rule. So the signature rule is applied to an individual email on the campaign canvas and not done in the email editor. So again, we apply the signature rule on the campaign canvas, and it's on the campaign canvas that we set the from, which could be one of many people, to many recipients. And so this is a many-to-many relationship. And again, from a visual point of view, it would look something like this. So we have Jenny, Jason, and Jessica, who are all in the sales team. And on the far right-hand side, we have a great mix of people. Jenny owns some of those relationships, as does Jason, and as does Jessica. So how on earth does Eloqua know to send an individual person, and if I pick on one person, so if we take this person right here in the center, how does Eloqua know that Jason is in fact the account manager for that particular person? Okay, so this is where the rule comes into place. So let's have a look. So this is, just again to clarify, this is what it looks like in the email editor, and this is what it looks like in the email client. So this is a screenshot from Apple Mail, but whether it be Outlook or Gmail or whatever it may be, you can see that we've got the from name shown right here, and I've just realized I've shown you a bad example, but the from name here, instead of being Adrian Jones, it should be Eloqua Marketing Cube. Okay, let's have a look at how that's applied. So that's simply done in the email editor. In order to apply the rule, we need to do that from the campaign canvas. So what we do here is we first of all identify the individual email that you need to focus on. And so if this is the individual email within your campaign canvas, you will double click, open up the step name, then we access the signature tab, tick the box called Use Signature, and then using the drop-down menu here on the far right-hand side, you select the specific rule that you're wanting to apply. Now, when you create the rules are typically not campaign specific, so you don't need to create a rule for every single campaign that you do. What you're doing is you're creating an overarching rule that suits the sales team. If you want to send out an email that comes from many salespeople, you would typically create a sales rule. If you wanted to create a rule that was in fact from department heads that might have owner relationships with specific accounts, you would create a rule for them. So again, you don't create rules at the campaign level specifically, you simply create rules based on the relationship. So let's dig in a little bit and understand how you actually do that. Okay, so when you locate the rule creation function within Eloqua, and I'll show you where that is in just a moment, but you come in and there's a few things that you need to do in the process. So the first thing is you need to create a default sender, and that's what this person is. So if for some reason the Eloqua contact does not list a salesperson or an owner against it, you need to have a default for who that might be. Okay, so the next question that everyone wants to know is how does Eloqua know that my contact, Jenny Smith, is linked to the salesperson, Jason Smith? Okay, so this is where you determine, this is the rule that you set right here that determines who gets which from address in their email. So what we're doing is we're going to set the key that defines the email sender. In our example, we've chosen the contact field. So from the contact field, we select that first of all from the drop-down, and then all of the different options appear here. So in our example, we're using the Oracle email address salesperson field on our contact to present all of these folks over here on the far right-hand side. Okay, so set the key field that defines the email sender, and as I said, in this case, we've chosen contact field, and that's the actual field that we'll be using, which contains an email address. Now, just to draw your attention there, when you select on that key field, you've actually got some options. You've got contact field, which is the most common one that people would use. You could also use a custom object field or even an event registration field. So again, the event registration field relates specifically to those of you who have the event module within Eloqua. So most of you, I think, would have options 1 and 2. And I think a couple of you might have option 3, but definitely option 1 or 2. So the custom object field might be, for example, where your instance of Eloqua is integrated to the CRM, you may be linking in service object information. So if you're using your CRM to manage a ticketing scenario, you might have a service manager who owns a particular account. So in this case, it could be the service manager associated to an account that would determine the from address going to various people from Eloqua. So where we've said the contact field, specifically the Oracle email address salesperson contact field, we need two pieces of information. We first of all need to understand what is the value that sits in that field, and that's what this is. So field value is this field that we're talking about right here. So field value, and in this example, as we've said here in our naming convention, that field contains an email address. And so you can see those email addresses listed there. And over here, now this is the part that confuses some people, is the email sender. In order to set up these rules, you need to have all of those people, and this is typically the sales team in this example, but it's anybody within your organization that you want to be able to have Eloqua send an email from. You need to have them loaded into Eloqua as users, but non-licensed consuming users. Okay, so there's no impact to, obviously, to your organization from a financial point of view, but it's within the user profile that we add all of the data that you would typically find in an email signature. So that's what we put in their job title, their mobile phone, their office address, maybe their department. You can also add a link in there with an image, etc. All of that information feeds into the layout of the signature. But here we're just focusing on the rule for the signature. And so these here are actually users. So Will Griffith, Jackie, Marco, Simon, Uli, etc. All of these folks over this side under email sender, they have to be users within your system. So this is a one-time setup. This is not something you need to do every single campaign. It's set up once. The only thing you need to factor in is the maintenance of this information. So if people leave your organization, that's probably not too big a deal. Because if everything's working perfectly, and we know it really does, but anyway, if everything's working perfectly, the sales administrator from a CRM point of view should probably take, so if in this example, Jackie Fuster was to leave Oracle, what we need to do then is go through the CRM system and change all of Jackie's contacts to whomever the new hire is. So there'll be a reassignment process done. And so once that reassignment process is done in the CRM, that information will then automatically work its way through into Eloqua within usually 15 minutes, which means that even though Jackie will still sit here potentially within the rule, no one will ever receive an email from Jackie because she's not listed as an Oracle salesperson any longer within the system. Now this is a complex one, so please, if there's any questions, let me know. To give you an idea, this whole process to set this up and have this functioning is maximum probably an hour and a half or so to do. And as I said, it's really a one-time setup exercise. It's not something that you do over and over again. The next step is to look at the cosmetics and to understand the layout. So signature layouts really are just the cosmetics. It's really just simply the cosmetics of the email and what you're trying to do and how you want it to look. So most companies will typically do the layout pretty much like they would do it within Outlook or Lotus Notes or whatever the application is that you're using for email. But this is what it looks like in Eloqua itself. So on the left-hand side is the email editor, and on the right-hand side is what the actual finished product looks like when it arrives in your inbox. So on the left-hand side, you can see what we're doing here. These are actually all field merges coming through from the Eloqua user profile. So address details, email, office phone, mobile, click here to visit our website. The personal photo you can see is a field merge, but you can see how the photo then actually looks over here on the right-hand side. And so those photos are simply stored in your component library within Eloqua and then displayed accordingly. So you just need to see, you can realize here on the left-hand side, this looks to take up less space, but in fact, it takes up more space here. And so obviously it's the photograph that is kind of pushing things down there. So you just need to make sure you factor that in when you build out the actual email within the editor. To give you an idea in relation to how quick this is, I managed to pull together this for a customer. I was at a conference. They desperately wanted to use this initial layout for a campaign going out on the weekend. I think it was 1 o'clock at a conference. I managed to get out of the conference. I found a pub next door, sat down, got online. They sent me through all of the details in an Excel template that I could upload with all the user profile information. And within about an hour, hour and a half max, we had the whole thing ready to go so they could apply that information to their various campaigns. Let me just quickly show you a campaign canvas and how you apply that, and we're just about done. While I'm grabbing that, please, if you've got any questions for Tim, in the context of any of these, please let me know. So you'd have an email here, and you actually need to have an asset attached to the step before you can apply the signature. But once you've done that, you can see here user signature, and it's a dynamic signature rule that we've created. That's the only type of rule. And so now you can see my various options appear right here. So we've got the Marketing Cube sales team, the Oracle joint campaign signature rule. Skididus is a business partner of ours. I did one that was one-off for one of the guys at Oracle for a joint campaign that we did, etc. But that's effectively where you apply the rule. And you can see here you've also got the option to force. But you would rarely use this one because you're using that anyway from you can do that directly within the email itself, within the editor. And that's probably the final point to make. Even if within the email editor you change up there in the top left-hand corner the from and the email address, once you add that email here to the campaign canvas and you assign a signature rule, as we've done right here, that will override the actual email editor. So the campaign canvas and the rules that you apply on the campaign canvas will always override what the experience is from within the actual email editor itself. So that brings us to the end of today's user group meeting. But would love to know if there's any questions. If you've got any questions or comments, please use that chat feature. So today's session has been recorded, as you might have heard as you arrived. So within the next week or so, that will be available on our YouTube channel, and we'll make sure you get a link to that information. Righty, Tim, I think we might be done. All right, folks, well, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time and participating. I hope you find these sessions valuable. We'll be sure to get some information to you a little bit faster than we did last month, but you'll certainly have the replay available to watch. So thank you. Have a great week, and we'll be in touch soon. Thanks again. Cheers. Bye-bye.